Mr. Priebus, welcome. I want to start with a little business before we get to the substance of things. There's been a debate about when to take the president seriously. He recently tweeted that the press was the enemy of the American people. Should we take that seriously from him?
Well, I think you should take it seriously. I think that the problem we've got is that we're talking about bogus stories like the one in the New York Times, that we've had constant contact with Russian officials. The next day, the Wall Street Journal had a story that the intel community was not giving the president a full intelligence briefing. Both stories grossly inaccurate. Overstated, overblown, and it's total garbage. So we spend, 48 hours on bogus stories, and the American people suffer. So I do think it's a problem, and I think that the media needs to, in some cases, not every case, John, but in some cases really needs to get its act together.
The enemy?
Well, if the theory is that the press is supposed to be a free forum of information to speak to the American people, I think it ought to be accurate. And I think that we've gotten to a place, John, where the media is willing to run with unnamed sources, apparently false leaked documents, to create stories. I mean, we deal with one after the next. I think that the media should stop with this unnamed source stuff, put names on a piece of paper, and print it. If people aren't willing to put their name next to a quote, then the quote shouldn't be listed, period.
What you're describing is something that in all the presidencies I've covered is a very familiar complaint from White Houses going back a very long time. And no previous White House has called the press the enemy.
Well, I think in our case, we have a total feeding frenzy and something that's gotten so out of control. When you look at the president's accomplishments, why don't we talk about the fact that we've pulled out of TPP? We did a deregulation executive order that takes 2 regulations for every one that's been put in place. We nominated Neil Gorsuch. We signed a bill, the president, in saving our coal mining jobs. We've met with the UK. We've met with Canada. We've met with Israel. We have done so many things that are noteworthy and an accomplishment one day after the next. The storyline should not be about bogus Russian spy stories. They should be that this president has accomplished more in the first 30 days of this presidency than people can possibly remember in a very long time. It's a story of accomplishment, and that's not what we're talking about.
Well, we're talking about the declaring that the press is the enemy. And I just wanted to ask you this. In the past, when the president when he was a candidate and he targeted people, say protesters at a rally, some people found that an opportunity to take license and target those people. As a spokesman for the White House here with us today, what would you say to anybody who might take license with the idea when the president says the press is the enemy and act on that declaration by the president?
Well, I don't know what you mean by act on it. I mean, certainly we would never condone violence, but I do think that we condone critical thought. And I think that if Americans put critical thought, which I think they will, into what they're reading in these newspapers and actually what's being accomplished by the Trump administration, they would realize that the press, in many cases, has not been doing their job in reporting the truth. And the truth is, day after day after day, we have good stories to tell, great accomplishments, businesses coming back, the stock market's at an all-time high, companies like GM, Ford, Chrysler, Intel, all across this country are adding jobs by the thousands. And it's because President Trump is doing the things every day to give confidence to business owners and workers across America that things are getting done positively. Instead, we're talking about stupidity and intelligence reporting that is based on facts that's not coming out of the actual heads of these intelligence agencies, and we're sitting here talking about it, and it's a shame, and it needs to end.
Let me ask you about something Senator John McCain said in front of a group of European leaders at the Munich Security Conference. He said that the audience would, quote, be alarmed by the growing inability and even unwillingness to separate truth from lies. Your response to that criticism of the administration?
Well, I think it's a good criticism of the media. It's very difficult to separate the truth from the lies.
Mr. Priebus, he wasn't talking about the media.
I get it, John. I understand the question, and I'm just asking you to do the same thing in regard to the media and what we've been dealing with lately in responding to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week of cable news with one chyron after the next of a lie from another source that doesn't want to actually name a single person in these bogus stories. And so we'd rather talk about the truth and what's happening instead of these bogus stories. So if you go through the litany of things that we've accomplished, the lobbying ban, hiring freeze, deregulation, protecting Americans from terrorists.
I understand, but
I think it's been an accomplishment.
I understand, but if we could get back to the question from Senator McCain of Arizona, who made that claim about truth from the White House. What's your response to that?
My response is that I don't even know what he's referring to. I mean, I understand. I didn't see his statement, but he would be wrong in regard to that statement and the White House and President Trump. The fact of the matter is, the level of accomplishment that he's put forward so far in the first 30 days has been remarkable.
Let me ask you.
And I've already gone through the litany many times with you.
Let me ask you about that litany. In conversations I've had with members in the administration and also Republicans on the Hill, they have said that while they're on your team, they're on your side, they recognize all those accomplishments you talk about, that when the president says the White House is a fine-tuned machine, and when Stephen Miller in the White House says it's an understatement that you're in control, what they worry about is that not everything is in control. And there's such an effort to show how things are in control that there may be a blind spot at the White House of the things that, naturally, with any administration, need to be fixed. For those people who are worried about that blind spot, about the things that do need to be fixed, what's your words to them?
Well, first of all, there you go again. You're talking about some people, those people, them, they. Who are these people, John?
You've not heard any. You've not heard any.
The fact of the matter is, no, but you're asking me a question about.
You have lots of conversations with people on the Hill.
This is what you guys do.
Well, let me ask you then. Let's put it this way, Mr. Priebus. In conversations you've had with the Hill, on conversations you have with, say, Speaker Paul Ryan and lots of other leaders on the Hill, when they talk to you, do they express no concern that things at the White House are maybe a little ragged on certain issues? Is it constant praise that you get from your allies on the Hill?
Look, I think what we hear from people on the Hill is the same thing I'm telling you, is that the media is obsessed with a lot of false, hollow stories without sourcing that we have to track down and deal with. You have,
let me ask you.
You have constant.
Let me ask you this, Mr.
Go
Priebus.
ahead.
So in every answer, you've turned it back to the media. So I guess the question is the strategy now to answer any question by just turning it back on the media and using a fight with the media as a way to try to control the storyline?
John, the last few questions you've asked make no sense. I mean, you're talking about people that you're not naming and whether or not some things need to be improved. And what would you say to people that say some things? I mean, what things, what people, what are you referring to? Give me a specific question with a specific purpose, with a specific accusation, and I'll answer the question. But you're asking me a vague question without any specifics, and you want me to give you a specific answer.
Well,
it's ridiculous.
I guess the president was the one who said the administration is running like a fine-tuned machine. So I'm referring to a comment that he made, and people I talked to on the Hill don't agree with that comment. And so I'm wondering whether you think that there is a disconnect there, and whether you have to address that with your allies who, again, have your interests at heart, but think there are parts of the administration, and what your evaluation as the person who's the chief of staff is in terms of improvements you have to make in the administration.
Well, look, I mean, I think for one thing, it is a finely tuned machine, but I also think that it's a machine that is the longest administration without a full cabinet. And as those cabinet positions are being filled, the positions underneath those cabinet secretaries are being filled. And I do think that things get more robust and they become more built out as you move forward. And I think all those things are going to help the entire Trump administration. But as far as what we've done on a daily basis, whether it's meeting with retailers, whether it's talking about women empowerment, whether it's meeting with foreign leaders, or whether it's signing an EO or saving the coal industry, those are things that we're doing day in and day out. And I think that the media, and not necessarily you, John, but people like you ought to spend more time on the actual substance of what's happening as opposed to hollow stories about what might be happening out there across the world, which is not based on any fact or any actual specific information.
Sanctions, he can't make any promises. He didn't even have the job yet.
Yeah, well, as the president made clear,
he was fired not because of the call or the content of the call, and I don't know what was said yet. I haven't seen a transcript. I suppose neither of you. So we have to withhold judgment on that. But he was let go because he misled the vice president.
That's right.
In terms of describing what he discussed.
Right. I just wanted to make it clear that it's not necessarily any conversation that he may have had in specifics within that conversation, but the way he characterized it to the vice president. I mean,
Well,
and that is a...
That's the reason why he was not retained. We can't make a final judgment on what he said or didn't say in the conversation until we know what he said or didn't say.
Well,
that's been allegations made.
And real quick on this Russian spy ship cruising off the coast of the U.S. What is that
it's
about?
in international waters. It's obviously a provocative action, but the United States sends ships around the world, and we protect and defend the right of all nations to travel in international waters. I think it's a deliberate act by Putin, in this case, to be provocative, because that's the way he keeps attention of the Russian people off of the problems they have. Their economy is in deep trouble. It's contracted in the last 2 years. 55% of their federal budget comes from a direct tax on oil and gas, and the break-even point is oil at $110 a barrel. It's way below that. Nobody expects it to achieve that level, so they're facing a huge budget deficit. Their population is declining, and the only part of the population that's going up is the Muslim population, with which he has so much trouble. So he's got a lot of problems. And let me tell you one other thing. There's a lot of talk about Russia because they do have a nuclear arsenal. That makes them a world player. But Russia's economy is smaller than Canada, smaller than South Korea. It's half the size of California's economy. So we have to keep this in perspective. We are the world's superpower, and we should not lose perspective over these provocations that are coming, and deal with them, I think, in a strong and effective way. But keep in mind, there's only one superpower in the world now.
Thank you for your assessment, Senator.
Thank you.
Good to see you, as always, Senator George Mitchell there. And more than a year ago, we had on one guest here who said when oil prices